Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a really fascinating investigative report on U.S. infrastructure today. It essentially reveals this massive geopolitical reality hiding literally right under your tires.
Right, because you probably don't think twice about the yellow lines on the highway, unless, you're drifting out of your lane.
Exactly. But right now, 96% of that yellow pigment used in U.S. road lines is imported, mostly from China and India.
It is wild. Your local tax dollars build the physical roads, but the chemistry keeping you in your lane is almost entirely foreign sourced.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Correct.
We used to rely on lead chromate for that classic highway yellow, which was obviously highly toxic.
Very toxic.
So the industry shifted to modern synthetic azo pigments, specifically pigment yellow 83.
Which is definitely safer.
Yeah.
But synthesizing azo pigments is fiercely exothermic. I mean, they generate so much heat that factories literally have to run massive industrial ice makers just to force the paint to crystallize correctly.
Yeah, if you don't nail that exact crystal structure.
The paint just doesn't work.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how the United States actually managed to lose its grip on that highly complex manufacturing process. Back in the 80s and 90s, the U.S. was a powerhouse in this sector
But then the bottom completely fell out.
because of two major pressures. First, heavy foreign subsidies, particularly in China and India, allowed manufacturers there to sell pigment below the sheer cost of American raw materials.
And then you have the toxic wastewater issue.
Exactly. Making this pigment creates a lot of it. While U.S. producers were strictly adhering to EPA standards, overseas competitors were operating with virtually no environmental overhead.
Which severely undercut American prices.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Despite all that global pressure, there is exactly one facility left in the entire country making this yellow road pigment, the Sun Chemical Plant in Muskegon, Michigan.
And they aren't surviving by just making paint. They've essentially integrated an environmental cleanup operation directly into their assembly line.
It is brilliant. The plant sits adjacent to an EPA Superfund site. So remember that intense heat we just mentioned.
The exothermic reactions.
Right. They actually draw up contaminated groundwater from the Superfund site to cool down those reactions.
Which is incredibly efficient. By doing this, they contain the toxic water plume, pre-treat the water before it hits the public system, and cut their reliance on the local aquifer by 45%.
That is a massive reduction.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to ask why you should care about one plant in Michigan. Well, you remember the Texas ice storms in 2021. Most people immediately think of the power grids failing.
But what really flew under the radar was that the freeze paralyzed petrochemical production.
Precisely. It caused a nationwide paint shortage that completely halted essential road maintenance across the country. It was a massive wake-up call regarding supply chain fragility.
And right now, that Muskegon plant is only operating at 30% capacity.
Yeah, and it supplies just 4% of the U.S. market.
Meaning if a major global trade disruption were to hit today, the U.S. would quite literally be unable to maintain basic highway safety. We couldn't even paint the lines.
Which is exactly why policymakers are looking at this vulnerability right now.
Impartially speaking, we are seeing some legislative shifts. Michigan's 2025 budget actually included language requiring U.S.-made pigment for state roads.
And federally, there's a bipartisan push. H.R. 3933, which spans the 2025 and 2026 sessions, they are trying to officially reclassify this pigment from a standard manufactured good to a construction material.
That reclassification is the mechanical key to the whole bill, right?
It is. Changing that legal definition automatically triggers Buy America protections for infrastructure projects. That legal shift forces federal funds to prioritize domestic sources, which theoretically stabilizes the U.S. supply and shields it from foreign subsidies.
So what does this all mean? It means the visual language of your daily commute relies on a highly fragile global network.
A network anchored domestically by just 120 skilled workers in a single plant in Michigan.
It definitely forces you to look at a simple yellow line on the asphalt in a completely different way.
It really does.
And we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. If something as fundamentally basic as the yellow paint on our streets was quietly outsourced without us even noticing, what other invisible materials holding your everyday world together are completely dependent on vulnerable global supply chains?